In this video, we're going to take a look at refining some of our shapes. So I've taken the car a little further, but you'll notice if you look really closely, you can see some wobbles in the surface and some issues, and again, that we've kind of covered the fact that cars need to be perfect. How do you make it perfect? One of the things to start with here is if we really can't see what we're looking at until we add some lighting and some nice car shaders, and then be able to rotate lighting around it so that we can really sort of get an idea of what's happening in different areas of the car. All kinds of ways you could do this. You could just have a light rotating around the car if you want, but I'm going to show you a pretty unique way that's going to be able to help you out and get nicer lighting going on. First thing, we're going to need a decent car shader going. So let's get something going that works in the viewport as well as will work at render time. And we're going to do that with a physical material and OSL nodes. Open up Slate here. I'm just going to go in and create a physical material. I'm just going to hit H to close it up because I don't need everything. Again, I can connect things without it. We're going to have to make this sort of car shader ready in a sense. So I'm going to apply this to a bunch of the pieces here. So all the blue pieces, for instance, I think I've got a couple more up on top and the back. And I think that's probably it now for this. Back to my material editor, pick my physical material, hit A, and I will have applied it to the car. And I'm going to call this car paint. And with car paint, here that we have to, start making it look like car paint. Well, we want it shiny, which is something we've got going. It's a nice shiny kind of, reflections are high and everything. But we're probably going to want a little bit of metalness in there. I find that can help is dialing up some metalness. And coating parameters. So coating will give you this outside coat of, sort of like that candy coating effect happening on it. And then we can also play with the IOR and see what we get to get a depth going. Now we're going to take a look at a nice glossy, surface that's going to help. So we also want to get some metal flake happening in here. But already that's starting to look more like a car. But right out of the gate, the thing is it doesn't look shiny. And the reason it doesn't look shiny is the background environment back here is just gray. We want to get that set up, and we want something that's interesting in here. So back to our Slate material editor. I'm going to go in and create under maps, OSL environment. We're going to use an HDRI environment. And then I have downloaded from the fabulous site, by the way, which is HDRI Haven. It's fantastic what they do. So, kudos to them for putting out all this sort of stuff for free. So I'm going to take a look at Venetian crossroads in this case. Find good ones that look nice. This is this nice crossroads. It's got some nice colors in it, but nothing strong. It's just sort of some, brownish values. It's got sunlight coming and cutting across it. So you're sitting at this crossroads, and we can really use this lighting change to help affect. And we're going to get a nice reflection all the way around the scene with it. So I'm just going to hit H and just close that off again. And we're going to open up our environment panel, and we're going to drop that in the environment panel. So from the out into the environment panel and instance that in, and we have use environment on. So we can then, by default, it usually comes up. I've had it off since I've been doing some of this. So the viewport background, make sure it's viewing viewport background, or you can go back to solid color here. So here's now that background in the scene, and all of a sudden we start getting things to reflect. And as soon as you start getting reflections on the surface like this, you'll start seeing where the inconsistencies are and what you need to correct. This is looking reasonably smooth. But we want it looking a little better than this. So underneath here is the ground, this ground one. I've just got a plane on the ground. I've actually got it set to render at 10 times the size so that shadows don't accidentally fall off of it. But let's get, a matte shadow material on this as well. So I'm going to just create a materials general matte shadow. And we'll just apply the matte shadow, pressing A, hit M and close that off. That means it now sits down here. And one of the things I did with this object is something we did previously. Under the properties of that object, I turned off backface cull so I can look up from underneath the car and still have it there and not worry about having to hide it. But I also turned off show frozen in gray because I don't want it to come out gray. I want it to continue to show our shadows. I have a single light in the scene. I'm just going to open up my camera lights section here that you can see I've got just a single distant light, Arnold light. I've adjusted the intensity a little bit, and I just kind of have it pointing down on a bit of an angle. And this is just sort of a key light coming in. We don't necessarily have to have it, but I like seeing the shadow underneath the car. It just somehow seems a little more grounded when you do this. Okay. So I'm going to hide those off. Now the HDRI looks like the car is floating. So back to our material and back into the HDRI, and I'm going to turn on ground projection. And you can see that it tries to move the ground up. Now we may need to adjust that a fair bit to make it start looking normal. So I'm going to crank that up probably a fair bit higher. And I try and get the tiling on the ground to look like it's something reasonable, at least. Now, it's always going to distort the background around the scene unless you look at it really low down. That doesn't matter. We're not going to ever render against this. We're just going to use it for lighting so that we can see the light in the scene here. Now, something else you can do is also use custom background because it's often you don't want to see all that clutter behind you, and never leave it at black. Always put it into some sort of gray value so it's kind of nondescript back there. But we can toggle on and off this viewport back there. I use custom background option here. And now we're still going to get the lighting. We're still going to get the reflections. And we can even still get the shadow underneath the car. But now we can really see what's happening. What would be really nice is if we could go about rotating this HDRI so that we have it in a position where we can rotate it around the scene and see what's going on. You can do one of two ways actually, and probably the easiest is to animate the rotation happening. Now, funnily enough, if you do this, by the way, it won't render in a preview render for some reason. It's a known issue, and hopefully will be corrected soon, that when you scrub the timeline, or at least when you preview render, it won't rotate it, but that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to spin along to frame 100. I've set my default key type to be linear so it doesn't speed up and slow down. I can change the keys obviously later through the dope sheet curve editor or through the mini curve editor down below here, however you want to do it. It's entirely up to you. So I'm going to turn on animate, just open up our material, go to the HDRI, and then we're going to find the rotation value, and I'm going to type in 360 so that it is now been rotated. So what's nice now is, and again, to turn off animate, or you can hit the auto key button. If you slide the timeline, let me just show this again. So we're going to say a viewport, we're going to go into here, my apologies, and we're going to turn off use custom background so you can see this happen. You'll notice when I slide the timeline, nothing happens with the background. It isn't rotating until I let it go. Now, if you want to see that rotating around kind of in real time, use your greater than, less than signs, or comma, period. And if you hold those down, you can now see it rotate around your car. This is a great way of just being able to rotate your HDRI so that you can really see what's going on. So as that rotates around, you can see where the problems are in the model. Besides, the reflections now look correct, and the car is going to start looking a lot better. Let's get a better looking material on this. I'm going to turn my viewport filter on. Again, it's going to hide the planes that I set to non-rendering. So those get hidden right away because the viewport, if you right click on this little button, it'll open up the viewport settings, and you can see show renderable only is the default. Okay. Back to the material editor. And now let's build out our car paint a little more so that we have some nice a texture going on. We've got that metal flake under the clear coat. So right now we have the clear coat turned up. We're playing with our IOR to see what we can get. Maybe you can crank it all the way up and just play with it up and down, see what you get. And now we want to go in and load in some things. So I'm going to use OSL Uber Noise in this case. And again, I'm just going to collapse it down. And this Uber Noise gives us all sorts of different noise types. I'm going to use cellular. And with cellular on, we're then going to get this, sort of mixed and noisy pattern with, sort of blocky, grainy. So if you look at a metal flake, it almost looks like, the glitter kind of thing under the paint. We want to get rid of distortion. I'm going to remove that, or else it starts looking really kind of weird. So I want to remove the distortion. You could just turn it off if you want, and it isn't giving you distortion. Now we're going to take the output of that and we're going to control inputs into our material here. And we're going to actually blend a couple of these together in a very unique way. We're going to take them out of color and into base color, and also out of the same color into reflection color. So we're going to try and get a reflection going on in here. And then we're going to set this to the color that we want our car to be. So, maybe we want some of those, blue tones in there. I'm going to, pick something maybe lighter, and you can just drag down and say copy, and then, maybe something darker. And we can start to see what we're going to get in that color of the car. Now the noise we've got is absolutely huge, so we need to make that much smaller so that we get that feeling of the that glitter underneath the surface. But you can see what we're getting as far as a shape goes at this point. So with the noise, we're going to take that base wavelength value way down. I'm guessing we could even try down at 1. Might be pretty good. We also might want to take the number of iterations. If you take this down to 1, you'll notice that basically you get just little, almost squares going on. The iterations will make it smaller as well, and sort of lay them over each other, so you can play with that. And you can see now you're getting that metal flake look underneath the paint color at this point. So what we also might want to do is get that look that I had, or that I've had and been getting with it, is that idea when you sort of see the fall off, the color changes a little bit. And so we're going to grab out another one of these, just shift drag it out. And I'm going to take the colors maybe over into the purpley values. So I'm just going to drag them both over into those purpley values, let's say, for sake of argument. And now we want to blend these two together based on the fall off. So if we go to OSL, Utility, Fall Off, we can grab the fall off map here. Now the fall off has got, the facing, and that's going to be our blue values because that's the color of the car in a sense. And then the fall off color can be into those purple tones. And I'm just going to hit H and close that down. And I'm going to take the output amount and just override both of those that we already had. So both the base color and the reflection color. So here's the result of that. You can see there's a lot of purple on that fall off. We can play with the power value. And if we take that down, we'll get more of the fall off. If we take it up, we'll get sort of more of the facing. So we can play with the angle of the face so that we can get it just so as it falls right off, we get some of those purpley tones. The reason I'm doing it this way and not using the Arnold car shader is the Arnold car shader doesn't work in the viewport, and I want to be able to see this as I'm working and modeling. This is going to be partly a modeling aid. Even if I were to swap it out at the end, if I found the car shader gave me a better look, I could swap it out. But this will give you near identical results in both the viewport and in a render, so they'll look just about identical. We can control quite a bit here. Another little trick is that, we've got this base wavelength and we might want to change that and adjust it. The thing is we're going to have to adjust it in 2 different places now. We don't want to do that. We want to be, able to keep them aligned and the same. So I'm going to go to OSL values and we're going to say float value. And the default of that should be 1 because that's what I'm currently at. I'm just going to, close that down, and I'm going to take that out. and I'm going to drop it into the scale of both of these. So now I'm overriding the scale value of the noises. So with this base wave scale, and you can see I've got a map going into it now. So now I can control this one and get the end result that for both of them. So there it is with the noise scale way up again. And again, we can now take that back down and we can adjust both of them easily. So this is a great way to be able to work. Maybe I'll push that power up a little bit and just get it as it falls off to the edges kind of thing to get the purple. Now, though, when we look at our vehicle, we can see that we're getting that nice, reflection color. We want to see the side better. We can hold down our greater than less than, and that'll allow us to be able to really see what's going on. Now we need some glass, maybe some chrome materials, and we can, see better what's happening on those as well.